Emotions, grief, fear, anger, how do we navigate them? It's one of our big challenges in life, is to navigate our emotions with skill. And I'm super excited for this conversation because I'm talking to someone very special in my life who is a healer in many ways, but also is my biological mother. So, hi, Mum.
Hi, son.
And yeah, maybe you've seen a video of us two before on the YouTube channel. And yeah, Mum is one of my mentors, which I'm really grateful for on my journey. And yeah, today we're going to explore emotions, and excited to explore more. And then later on, we could find out more about the amazing work that you are doing as well. Hey, friend, before we get into the rest of the episode, if you want to help support me make more videos like these to help you and to help us collectively live in balance, I invite you to join the online Wudang Taoist Wellness Academy. This is Master Gu's, my Tai Chi master's, teachings put onto the internet, recorded with love from the heart of China. You can learn Tai Chi forms, Qigong forms, guided meditations, Taoist philosophy, anytime, anywhere. Amazing practices to empower you to take charge of your wellness. We offer a free 7-day trial so you can see what learning's available for you for no risk and join the community. There's 800 students learning from around the world with monthly live streams with Master Gu. There's so much for you to explore. Click the link in the description to join and see for yourself. I hope you enjoy the rest of today's episode. So, emotions, as I said, are some of the biggest challenges that we have. And I've been exploring this idea of emotional alchemy. What is alchemy? So you would maybe think about converting base metals into gold, like somebody trying to convert chickpea cans into gold. Seems like a fool's errand, something that lost the greatest minds. I think Newton got obsessed with trying to turn things into gold. So that's one sense of alchemy, but in a broader sense, it's the transmutation, the transformation of things that maybe aren't that valuable into something that is more valuable. So in regards to our emotions, how do we navigate the intensity that comes up in our lives, anger and grief and sorrow, and transform it into at least relating to that in a more harmonious way, or actually those emotions beginning to serve us? Our emotions are feedback from the wisdom of our subconscious. And so, I want to just start off by beginning our journey into emotional alchemy, into understanding, what's your understanding of what the roles of emotions are? Because particularly with Taoism, which is the world that I came from, emotions, at least on the surface, are something that you meditate through or maybe don't spend too much time looking at. So, maybe a bit about your work and your journey into exploring emotions with the people that you work with.
Yeah, I'd say a few things. So I'm a qualified doctor, worked in the National Health System in the UK for many years, trained as a cancer doctor in an area called palliative medicine, so end-of-life care, supportive cancer care. And I guess I was meeting quite a lot of emotions like fear, anxiety, distress, and those things often we would medicate. But I guess my deeper journey as a healer meant that I always wanted to listen rather than to medicate, and I'd get into problems. One of the nurses on the ward said, "Why can't you just give diazepam and stop talking to people?" But it felt to me that journey up to death, that was a crucial time when, all our defenses are gone and we are really wanting to reconnect to ourselves. So over those years of being a doctor and then an integrative doctor, so just to say, I've set up a National Centre for Integrative Medicine. This is a movement for change that came over from Dr. Andrew Weil in Arizona, and it's about how you combine conventional and holistic and lifestyle approaches, all of which are really important if we're looking at health and well-being. But I just want to bring in a concept before I just talk about emotions, which is the theme of balance. because actually it's only very recently, in recent weeks, when I was preparing to teach on one of our seminar days around human consciousness, that I started to study the science of awe and wonder. And George will put a link to the book, because what that taught me is that we have thousands of emotions, not just hundreds, but we can chart out thousands of emotions, and remembering that some of those are very positive emotions. So within this book, I was studying the emotion of awe, which is where we feel small in the face of something bigger, but that often sets us into a mental state of wonder. So I guess even, in the past few weeks, I've started to reorientate myself away from, just creating a safe space in which people can express emotion, which I think, is really important, because so often emotions are suppressed. And when they're suppressed, I believe they make us ill, and there's evidence that they can make us ill or create inflammation in the body. But we can also start to really help people into positive emotions. So the idea of helping someone into what's called everyday awe, just 5 minutes a day, will lower these inflammatory markers in the body.
And what does that look like? What does everyday awe look like?
So it's a good question. Everyday awe can often be connecting with nature, but in a way where you really honor that connection, where you might, connect to a tree in blossom, but really look at the blossom, really look at the leaves, look at the tree, connect, maybe touch, feel, smell, experience more deeply the beauty of nature. And we've known for a while, that nature connection seems to, like forest bathing again, seems to drop these inflammatory hormones like cortisol. But we're starting maybe to connect up why that might be important. And just for those of you who might be in a city, don't worry. It might be that there is a lovely ginkgo tree out there that you can go and stand by. But if you haven't, then actually architecture, sacred geometry, space, height, these are the things that, again, we seem to be hardwired to move into a place of wow. And when we can move into that place of wow, we actually, in our more natural state, we're expected, almost in our conscious experience, to feel that wow. So if you're not getting that wow, and I know that George does a lovely 5-element practice where you're encouraged into wow, that is you moving into a positive emotion of awe.
Yeah, really fascinating jumping off point for that, both on not repressing our emotions and they having a function. And a metaphor that I love is, if we repress our emotions, it's like whack-a-mole. Like we think we've got it down, but then each time we try and smack it down, it comes back as a saber-toothed mole, and it's become more powerful because you've repressed it. And so to see it and to express it is really important. But then also the focus on cultivating positive emotions, things that feel good and that nourish us, and this awe and wonder. And that's been a huge part of my journey of reconnecting with who I am and what I'm a part of. Particularly Taoism is what I've been exploring, this word, the Tao, which the Taoists use to refer to nature, the whole universe, everything within it, and the principles that shape us. And so for me to reconnect with my nature, with the Tao, led to that awe and wonder. And I think most of us have had that experience naturally when we are in nature, to have that wow coming out. And yeah, ideas, and intentionally cultivating that time. So like that beautiful practice of 5 minutes a day, I absolutely love that idea, because sometimes, we assume that joy and happiness is just something that happens spontaneously, which is true, like we can't force it, but nonetheless, we can create consciously the conditions that help us experience that awe and wonder. And the Taoists have lots of fun practices. So yeah, you mentioned the Tai Chi form that I sometimes share, which has this wow moment, which is a really liberating thing to do just when we are in connection. Wow. and to have specific practices to help us realize that.
Because actually what the science again shows is that it takes us out of small self and into bigger self or more connected self. Maybe, we were talking about that mountain view where you get more perspective. The same thing is happening in our brains. And in small self, it's really interesting that we are self-critical. So this idea of how to love yourself seems to be really crucial. The emotion, of love and self-love. We often create barriers or obstacles to being able to love ourselves. So these practices, which might, you might leave your flat, you might go outside, you might find a tree, these might take you out of some kind of quite deep, dark emotions that are making you feel sad and troubled, and then somehow you feel yourself opening up. So it's really important, because those emotions, we're talking about emotions like despair, really drive people into a very dark space. So it's important to understand the colours that we can paint with in our emotional landscape.
Such a important point. And I've been working on a film which will be out in 2023 at some point, and I was up in the mountains of Scotland, and one of the kind of key insights that came out of me making the film, which I always learn through making these films, is the inner mountain view. So the word wisdom derives from the root to see. So when we are in a place of wisdom, we have perspective, we can see clearly. And so mountains, physically higher, we have more perspective, we can see more, which is one reason why mountains have always been spiritual places, because they give us that place of perspective. But we can cultivate the inner mountain view, so that place of wisdom and perspective from within. And part of that is realizing that, we have human needs and this voice in our heads that, wants us to navigate the world with skills so that we're safe. But nonetheless, it confines us to, I'm George, I messed up in various ways and is limited. But then, the release and the relief when we step out into nature and maybe just have moments of silence, if we're touching a tree or feeling the wind on our face. And in those moments of silence, there is no George, there is no limited self, and we just naturally fall into that sense of ease and connection. And that is a real gift, and something that I've connected with more as something that is supportive, that I don't always need to be stuck in George with all of his stories. I can just, lose myself and reconnect.
And I'm thinking of Nelson Mandela, who lived imprisoned, in a very small space with himself, but managed not to generate anger towards the people who were keeping him imprisoned. And so I think this inner journey, can play out in very small spaces. Sometimes we might think that privilege might take us into big spaces or comfortable spaces, but I guess the journey to find balance in our emotional landscape, to find more emotional health, can start in small ways, in ways that we might feel, can't necessarily grow easily, but will do. So I think, I think we get inspired by people like Nelson Mandela, who seem to overcome an unbearable situation. But I think sometimes we can also find ourselves lonely, isolated, and in despair. And we know that a lot of young people are struggling with this. So I guess this discussion about emotional health is just super important at the moment. And just to say, within integrative medicine, I would also bring in food, so that, food for mood, really thinking about what we cook for ourselves, the colours of the rainbow that we might look at. We might get a wow from that as well. So, and that would come into self-care. So there are lots of ways that we might generate in the course of the day things that will help us into, better emotional balance.
Such important points. And yeah, looking holistically at ourselves and mind, body, and spirituality, and what does our body need? Breath, movement, food that is nourishing, and ideas for our mind as well. I want to come back to, I think that example of Nelson Mandela is such a beautiful example of the power of emotional alchemy. So being locked away for decades for fighting for the freedom to express yourself no matter the color of your skin, the deep injustice of that. For many people, they would be lost in, these people being my oppressors and they deserve my resentment. And, all of that resentment, I think a Nelson Mandela quote, resentment is like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. Or a funner update of that is resentment is like drinking rat poison and expecting the rats to die. So it's powerful to take that stimulus that for most of us would be a lot of internal tension, resentment and pain, but then to transmute it, to transform it into love ultimately, and for him to connect with the fact that all of his oppressors had gone through traumatic journeys. They were all once children crying for their mother. And so what was the journey that they went on to become people that would, lock other people up because of the color of their skin? So that's the power of alchemy. And talking about privilege, like often, if we are lucky enough to not live in a war-torn country and to have, our basic needs met, like who am I to be happy? Like this sadness, I don't deserve to transmute, to transform this emotion into happiness because, there's so much suffering in the world. Who am I to suffer? But we can give countless examples, Nelson Mandela being one of them, when we give ourselves permission to apply that skill of alchemy to say, actually, I am enough as I am, that powerful statement. And what would love do? Can I trust my love? Can I reconnect with love? And that being a powerful way to help us live with freedom and joy.
Yeah, and as you speak, I realize that a lot of my work in cancer, where I kind of stop trying to do things and intervene or let others within the model, intervene, say with chemotherapy or radiotherapy or medications, where I just created a safe space for expression, that what I realized is people were carrying around a lot of anger and resentment, like suitcases that they would carry from room to room, and relationship to relationship. They'd arrive in a new relationship with, lots of, we talk about baggage. But these are really important things around just actually saying it's really important to work with your emotional health. So let's just really look at your experience. And I think the way to develop compassion is to receive compassion and really allow your story to be heard and for someone to acknowledge it. Just they can't change it, but to really deeply acknowledge the wounding that we as human beings experience. Then that transmutation, begins where the heart can be released, armoring the heart. We armor our hearts, so therefore we feel protection, but then of course we can't get things in anymore. And so opening that up. And none of this is easy. I mean, George and I are talking about compassion and love, but, there would be a whole range of things in our own lives where we get triggered, where we'd get angry, where we would get defensive. And I think just again, for me, George actually teaching me about Taoism, where you try and stay and flow and just go a bit deeper into the backstory. For, as you were saying with Nelson Mandela, he's going into the backstory of his oppressors. And when we do that, everything starts to shift and move and feels less stuck, because we realize that everyone's looking for love. And actually that there are no real baddies out there. There are just people that are hurt, that are moving in reactive ways.
Yeah, really beautiful words. And Taoism, with the yin yang, can teach us a lot about complexity. Like, life is complex, and the judgments that come into our head about ourselves and others is like the yang of just one half of the story. And so one of the powerful lessons from Taoism is, where's the hidden yin, that in that blackness, in that darkness? Can you take the breath, come to your inner mountain view, and take perspective? Because often the judgments that pop into our head isn't the accurate story, and it may be part of the story, but it's not the whole story.
And just keep the yin yang there for a minute, because as part of supporting transformation for change, we've set up a diploma in integrative healthcare for healthcare professionals. And I use this symbol a lot now, because I've really understood that actually balance is such an important part of health. But we've also got the feminine and the masculine. So in the Bible, the wisdom was called Sophia, and it was a feminine principle. Unfortunately, the patriarch, the masculine, in the past, particularly the past 500 years, I think, has got really dominant. And when the patriarch is dominant, it tends to suppress the emotional realm, because the emotional realm is more freeform, more flow. Remember, I'm not talking about men and women, I'm just talking about masculine and feminine. So allowing an appropriate expression of emotions at a good time, because we can't all be out there expressing emotions, 24 hours a day, but just being aware that the rigidity or structure sometimes of the masculine energy might prevent more of the flow and connection to what's going on in that inner world. And I find that a really useful model.
Big boys don't cry.
Well, it's simply big boys don't cry.
And that's a story that, intergenerational trauma, so it's like particularly the men in the world, but that kind of that masculine energy of strong man, no have emotion. And that's just a repression of ourselves, and it comes from armoring our heart, right? So we're stronger if we don't express our emotions, because we've been hurt before. And anyway, emotions are a distraction. And the metaphor that I heard recently, which I really love, is that, so we armor our heart, which means that even when we want love to come in, or we want to express love, we've got this hard shell around the heart, which prevents connection. So the aspiration is to have a doorway. And I want to get onto boundaries with you, because I think there's a really rich conversation here. So a doorway you can open and close to receive people as you so desire. From your inner mountain view, can you're talking about the power of expressing your emotions. Can you open that doorway of your heart to express your truth? Because we have such a deep need to be seen and to be heard and to be understood. And so that doorway means that it's not weakness. And so, ultimately what, the strong man archetype wants is strength. And the strategy to get that strength supposedly was don't show emotion. But actually, if we develop the doorway to actually be able to express love and receive love and to express our emotions in a grounded way from a place of wisdom, that is strength. So we get to the place that we wanted to, but from a more holistic and a more balanced place of acknowledging our emotions, expressing ourselves in a way that then means that we can deepen our relationships.
So this is really helpful, because I haven't spoken about using dreams a lot in my work, of just listening and allowing people to express. And sometimes the dream will express more than the person might want to connect to at that time. But I'm actually thinking of my own dream where I've had a recurrent dream where I can't keep people out. They're coming through my doors, and there are too many people in my space, and I can't get quiet and I can't get peace. So I think I love this image. I haven't heard of it before, but I love the idea that actually in a way I need to develop the boundaries more fully so that I can open the door rather than in my dreams, people pushing through my doors. And I think it's really important that we do have that sense of containment, but because actually, some people can be too loving with others, too sacrificial with others, and actually not be able to contain their own energy or sense of space. So in emotional health, we also need our no, and a more conscious no.
Which I love.
A nourishing no, yeah. And I think, this can get confusing. When do I say yes? When do I say no? When do I open my heart? When do I close my heart? And I don't know whether you could say a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the journey that we all need to take, is that wisdom journey. Wisdom is channeling what happens to our lives to the responses that serve peace and serves harmony. And so we all have to go on our own wisdom journey to know when is the time to have the nourishing no, or the nourishing no, a bow and a thank you, but no thank you. And when does it serve us to express ourselves and to be vulnerable? And so that's something that we always have to be deciding on a case-by-case, moment-by-moment basis. And that comes to then the complexity of living our lives, and that doesn't need to be an intellectual, okay, I'll express when I'm in situation A and not express when I'm in situation B. It's developing that embodied wisdom. And for me, the thing that's helped me the most is just knowing that I even have the inner mountain view in the first place. So, my journey starting from anxiety and confusion, and I'd beat myself up for being anxious, like Georgia messed up and uniquely messed up for finding life difficult. And I didn't know that I had this place of perspective. I didn't connect with the breath, that practice of the pause, so powerful. Just to, okay, so I'm noticing reactivity, I'm noticing judgments for myself and for others. I wouldn't even notice before, I'd just express, and I'd believe the thoughts that would pop into my head. And so taking a breath and coming to that inner mountain view, that place of perspective. And I think it's from that more grounded place that then your wisdom can be expressed, and you make that decision.
Yes, and I want to add in that within this integrative healthcare model is the idea that the body is wise and intelligent. So this idea of whole system approaches, so traditional Chinese medicine underpinned by Taoist philosophy would have the idea of the body as a whole system, naturopathy, homeopathy, Ayurveda, just to name but a few of these kind of, some ancient, some more modern, but disciplines where you would see the body as a complex, interconnected system. So sometimes listening to the body can take you into the inner place of knowing, and then you work out actually what is happening emotionally. But you might go through, like a lady yesterday in my clinic, we actually went through her hip pain, which was her, if you like, her presenting complaint of what the problem was. And then we find out that actually that takes us to a much deeper place in the emotional terrain, and even beyond into her worldview, what her deepest fears were. But we went through the body, so letting the body be a guide, rather than what we might do with the biomedical model, which is suppress symptoms. So again, just to be aware and to feel a sense of choice of where you might listen and where you might actually be distressed and need to suppress. But what would be wonderful is a model that evolved enough so that you could consciously make those decisions. And one key way is, I think, to honor the body as a wise and communicative system.
Yeah. And honoring, all of the emotions that come up. Yeah, so, I would beat myself up for being anxious. And really that was feedback from the wisdom of my body to say, you're not thinking right, you're maybe not having your needs met, not being in enough connection. And so to honor this feedback, like sometimes our wisdom is to just honor but not believe. And, we have a lot of thoughts that come up that we don't need to deal with. And the power of meditation is to just be able to develop the skill of, okay, I'm just going to let that one go. But then also sometimes to investigate, these are signals from the wisdom of the subconscious. I want to share one moment of emotional alchemy that I've been on recently, and the wisdom of the body to help me move that. So I work passionately on this journey that I'm going on with the YouTube channel and making films, and really passionate about what I do. And I notice in myself putting pressure on myself, and like, come on, George, work harder. There's not enough time. The world is burning. The activist in me, and just been putting a lot of pressure on myself, and holding more and more tension. That ultimately is how the body would give me feedback that I'm out of balance, because I'd have physical tension in my head and my jaw. And part of my journey has been developing sensitivity to where I hold tension, and an invitation for you is to, if you are feeling stressed at the moment, where is it in your body? Because beginning to just bring awareness to that part of the body not only can help you know where you are, which is a really important part to healing, but then to move from there. And then I came to you on the weekend, and you gave me some advice. I don't know if you want to share some of the thoughts that you shared with me.
Well, I just reflected back with George that that sense of mission brings forward propulsion, and this doing stops us being able to be present with ourselves. And George has had ambitious parents, myself and George's dad. We've both been ambitious and actually have struggled to be quiet. Or I was thinking about, when I started mindfulness practice, I realized how averse I was to boredom and how addicted I was to excitement. But it's something about being able to just soften into non-doing, and working maybe with the idea that you're serving the world in some way. But I suppose I did challenge that word mission, didn't I? Because with mission comes, I think, a story, and often our ego drives stories. We all drive stories, yeah.
And I know that all of you listening and watching have gifts to share with the world, with yourself and with your relationships. And the big insight that I got, actually, my mum beginning to just inviting more softness with what I've been doing at the moment. And then I did a movement practice yesterday. So for me, moving the body is often the most transformational thing. Like, before starting my Tai Chi journey, I'd think that the problems in my head needed to be fixed with thinking and doing stuff in my head. But yesterday I had a movement session and doing Qigong, and just felt that softening, and feeling in a space of much more softness. And the phrase that came to me is actually Zhongliang Ao Huang's definition of Wu Wei. So Wu Wei is a key Taoist concept. We see all this abundance in nature, there's so much being done, amazing plants, and there doesn't seem to be anyone forcing the plant to grow and saying, right, grow quicker. You're not growing quick enough, there's not enough time. It just grows. And so nature doesn't do anything, and yet so much abundance. So Zhongliang's definition of Wu Wei is, do not force that which is already being done. Do not force that which is already being done. And so, for me, connecting with my intention to be of service and passionate about my journey, but to soften into that, and to allow that flow of my nature to lead what I do, as opposed to missions being very heady. And so that was a powerful emotional alchemy moment for me, of that tension and that feedback from the wisdom of the body, and then mental guidance, as well as then physical re-embodiment to then soften. And that could be a phrase that you sit with after watching this session, are you forcing things that are already being done? Can you soften and yet still do the things that you want to, hold your responsibilities and to be of service?
And it kind of brings us back to that conversation we had at the beginning about awe, which is just this little I and big I. So, if we've got too strong a sense of ourselves or our ego, we can think we're doing a lot more than we actually are. And then we look behind and find that we're in this incredible current or flow. And actually, we're just offering our small part into a much bigger sense of flow. And I think, that's when we overdo is where we also attach too much importance to ourselves. It's not that we're not important, but and you said, we need to be seen and recognized. But if we could offer that a little bit more to ourselves, then a lot of what we see in the world that is destructive at the moment is actually that inner child of these world leaders not having been seen or recognized. So giving yourself time to step out of what you might be doing, to really love yourself, is actually, it's not a luxury. It might be a really important way to create harmony on the globe as well.
Self-care is not self-indulgence. And, how can we help others? If we have an empty cup, we need to fill our own cup first, and then we can then have the energy to be of service. What a beautiful conversation. And as we're beginning to come to a close, have you got any thoughts on how to make this actionable? So, we've talked about balance being the key word of recognizing and honoring supposedly negative emotions and to send love to them and allow them and get support with being able to understand what is going on for us. And then supposedly positive emotions, actually actively going out with practices to help us cultivate these things that feel good and nourish us. Are there any key takeaways to make that balance process easier?
Well, I think the key takeaway, if you wanted to, from this conversation, is just to make a list of things that you already do, because most of us, do stuff that, kind of helps us and makes us feel better. But for example, if you're sitting on strong emotions that, is like sitting on a horse that's kind of tearing away with you, then do try and get into some kind of talking therapy, because it's so important to have those things witnessed. So that's what I would say. If you're sitting on difficult emotions, whatever they might be, it might be grief or anger or sadness or despair, then, reach out and see if you can get some talking therapies. Otherwise, those kind of daily practices, mindfulness, where you just actually work out quietening enough to know what's going on in mind and body, and then really thinking about self-care through your food. It's such a practical way to do it. But to make sure that you've bought the kind of things that you enjoy that make you feel good. And then, this every day or getting outside, there are multiple things you can do, but just one other thing is just connection with others. So, this podcast is a way of connecting with a community, but we know that whatever you do, if you do it in community, it really enhances the impact on the body, because the body longs for connection. So again, if there's feelings of isolation for you, it might be a big step to kind of go out into community, but just think of small steps that might take you into a more connected way of being.
Beautiful advice. Thank you so much. And I want to hear a bit about the work that you're doing, because you're doing some amazing work with the National Centre for Integrative Medicine, both in Bristol in the United Kingdom and in the world. Could you share a bit about what you're doing and how people could connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've got a website. We've got a membership, the Society of Integrative Healthcare. You can join for, I think, a relatively small amount of money. That's a members-only site. But for example, it's got videos, practices, recipes, research. It's also a way of connecting. But we are a social enterprise, so we're a community interest company. We set up in 2014. We've finally found our home, which is really exciting. So we're now co-located with a wonderful charity called Penny Bron UK, just out in Bristol, just outside, about 5 miles. So we've got a beautiful healing centre, beautiful grounds. So we've kind of got 4 pillars to our organisation. We've got our clinical services, one-to-one with our team offering a range of integrative approaches. We've got our courses like mindfulness for well-being, food for well-being. There's a whole range that we've been delivering grant funded. We've also got our education programs, training healthcare professionals. We've got our community outreach. We want these approaches to be accessible because we're really interested in wellness at the heart. It has to be wellness at the heart of any health service rather than rescuing out of illness. So prevention and wellness really key. And then, as I said, we've got our Society for Integrative Healthcare. Do jump on our website, connect with us. We would love you to be part of this movement for change. I've just come back from France, where they're setting up centres for integrative medicine. Within our diploma training, some of our learner group are setting up centres for integrative medicine because we'd love that to be the health of the future, so that when you go to see a healthcare professional, they're actually really interested in all of these elements we've talked about today: your mental health, emotional health, physical health, looking at trauma, looking at ways that they can connect you, maybe to non-drug approaches initially. There might be the need for medication, but let's think about all those approaches that might help you find balance. So that's us. Does that tell you a bit more?
Beautiful. Yeah. We'll have links in the description for you to check out. And Mum and Dr. Elizabeth Thompson, thank you so much for today's conversation. It's been really beautiful.
Can I say one final thing, which is a big thank you to you, but also this sense for me of how young people like yourselves are really shifting things, that, not buttoning up, really connecting. And so I do feel that all of you out there connecting to these things much younger in life than I did, that you are going to be part of how we look after ourselves and the planet. So, George, it's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you. If you'd like to support me, make more episodes like this, as well as learning loads for yourself, check out the online Wudang Taoist Wellness Academy, Master Gu's teaching platform. You can learn Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, Taoist philosophy, so much amazing content from the ancient Chinese and Taoist traditions to help you take charge of your wellness. There's a free 7-day trial so you can try with no risk to see what learning is available and join perhaps Master Gu for some of his live streams and the community. There's so much for you to explore. Click the link in the description. Hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you for the next video.